That's cinema, baby.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hello, and welcome to The Good, The Pod, and The Ugly. I was going to do a Bane voice for a moment, and I just nixed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We're a film podcast, and we pair movies to derive a better understanding of the filmographies of notable directors or actors, typically one amazing someone per season. Often we have guests. I'm your co-host, Thomas.
And I'm your other co-host.
Fuck!
Fuck!
You know there was...
Oh, fuck.
Wow. Great start, guys.
All right.
Great
All
start.
All right.
We got Ryan and Ken here.
I
had a great Bane impression until these jokers ruined it.
Not jokers this week. That's 2 weeks from now. Okay, so yeah, we're The Good, The Pod, The Ugly. You may know us from our other podcast, Occupied Wall Street, where Ken, Ryan, and I review the bathroom switch along one of NYC's most renowned thoroughfares in Lower Manhattan, using our unique scoring system of bump it or dump it, one flush or two, swirly or girly. And if you like Occupied Wall Street and give it two shits, please note that Occupied is a spinoff of our original, moderately unsuccessful podcast, Potty All Night, which itself came from our preceding Go Ahead, Plunk, Make My Bidet.
Wow. But here on the Good, the Pod, and the Ugly, we do a deep dive on the creatives' paired films, and we do their backgrounds. We add some of our insights. We have covered numerous great directors and actors, and also Uwe Boll. Who are we talking about this season, Thomas? And what films are we paired?
Yeah, so I guess we're in some double digits of our seasons. This one's called Nolan Void. We are on the second half of our pairing of last week's Prestige.
The Prestige, yes.
Yeah, and this week, 2012's Dark Knight Rises.
Woo! Yeah.
2012, of course, being the year we covered Resident Evil Retribution.
Woo!
Thank you, Jack, for that. Oh, and we're joined this week by Jack.
Hi.
Welcome. The guest chair is yours.
Stop doing the fucking Bane voice.
Wait. Would you rather the Bane voice or
That one was okay, actually. That was better.
Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah, keep doing the Bane voice. It's great.
I want to hear a direct comparison, actually. Can we pause so that we can get a Bane versus Thatch?
Please don't. Thomas, keep going.
Keep going.
In 2012, we also covered not in 2012, films from 2012. Zero Dark 30, Spring Breakers, and Jack's personal favorite, Lincoln.
Yeah. That's it?
That's it for 2012. That's 4 movies.
That's not bad.
That's robust.
Yeah. No Cage.
The Cage had 4 movies this year, if I remember right, but none of them we covered.
It was a low.
Yeah.
It
Sounds
the low
about
one
right.
for him, right?
So 2012's The Dark Knight Rises. Jack you were what? 8 years old.
8 years old.
When this movie came out. That's mind-numbing.
And this is basically the Citizen Kane of movies for 8-year-olds.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I know when you first saw it, because we saw it together in a movie theater when he was 8, which is 5 years under the PG-13 rating. But
Woo! Best dad ever.
Ryan and Thomas, what's your experience with this film?
I saw it in the theater the opening weekend. This is the rare superhero series that Jenny really likes. So we were excited to go see it. But then that guy shot up that theater in Colorado right beforehand. And I got to say that really impacted my enjoyment of the film. Because this one has a lot more machine guns than the other ones, I feel like.
Thomas?
I saw this in theaters. I don't know if I saw it opening weekend or not, but yeah, saw it in theaters and then decided I didn't really need to watch a Christopher Nolan film for a while.
Learn out. We actually paid for it in theaters twice in 2012.
Did you
Remember
promise
that?
to go with your kids, but went with on a date?
No, that was
Before?
Interstellar. That was before that. No, we wanted to see the Avengers, but and then I brainwashed my son. We were mad at Disney and Marvel because they were making all this money hand over fist over Jack Kirby's creations, and they weren't paying the family shit. Because his work for hire contract made $1 million years ago. So I took Jack to see the Avengers, but we bought tickets for The Dark Knight Rises, which we already saw, and just went into the other theater. And then Marvel ended up paying the family like $80 million a couple years later.
Oh, is
Because
that
of your
right?
actions?
I didn't know that.
Exactly, yes. A sternly worded tweet used to do wonders.
Did you take a picture of the ticket stub when you sent the tweet? I bet that would have been really potent.
It would have. Yeah.
That's what did it. That was, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, wow. That was a good episode,
talk.
guys.
Yeah.
Hey, man, pauses are good. Don't worry about it. I cut them all out. Gather your thoughts and don't say It's perfect.
So,
Jack did a little background on this movie. It is the third in a trilogy. I don't know if you guys knew that. Or not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get there in a couple weeks, but yeah, no, it's also considered a accidental trilogy, I think. But
So, really?
you have some stuff to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, nothing new if you have already read the Wikipedia page, but Nolan wasn't interested in doing a third movie. And if you've seen The Dark Knight, spoilers, the ending of that one, you can kind of see it. It's wrapped up the whole story, I think, pretty well. And in a way, I believe this a lot more than the ending of Batman Begins, where he's like, I don't know if the Joker's going to be in the next one. The Joker card is all coincidence. But yeah, this one he had to be sort of convinced into doing it, and his brother Jay Knoll worked on the script with David S. Goyer, and all the three of them got a pretty solid outline. And yeah, his whole thing was he didn't want to just do an unnecessary third movie and get bored halfway through, I guess, which I don't know how Christopher Nolan could be bored making a movie where he's blowing shit up and
building life-size bat pods.
So yeah, and then if you look at his career afterwards, this was the last IP he's done, right? This last work for hire.
Yeah,
Everything since has been.
Well, he did a little production. He did have some, I think, producer credits on
Man of Steel.
Yeah,
Yes.
Man of Steel. But Jack, so is your big obsession with Ted Kaczynski that he never got bored? Because he's always blowing shit up.
Yeah, he's just like Bane in the movie. He's the good guy.
Huh. For you. So
It doesn't sound like Thomas is a big fan of this movie.
we wow. It sounds like that sounds like bait that you're just trying to. I don't think any of us are going to be fans of this movie. I don't think anyone could be a fan of this movie, but we'll get there. We don't want to jump. We don't want to jump the gun. We have an
Your
order
mustache
to
is
these
writing
things.
checks your body can't cash there, sir.
You better look out, buddy. I got straw sticking out the seams of my suit as I sit behind this judge's table, and I'm looking at you, Thomas.
Thomas, have you ever met an 8-year-old that just loves smashing action figures together?
Yeah, is that what we saw on screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to get my hot take out there, Thomas, I don't think this is as good of a movie as many of his other pictures, but I enjoy it much more than many of his other pictures on just like a visceral moment to moment level,
All right, Ryan, let's end this podcast because it's not I could have spoken for an hour and not said anything as summary as that. Thank you.
Well, here's Nolan's hot take on sequels. There are no good third sequels, basically. Rocky 3, maybe. But they were very difficult.
Revenge of the Sith. Or is that a 6th one?
That's a good.
I also think, Return of the Jedi has a lot of problems
No.
in it, but it also
It's
has some
terrible.
good stuff.
Like most of the movie, the entire first act.
Let's put it this
Oh my
way.
God.
Let's put it this way. Return of the Jedi and Beyond Thunderdome, their weaknesses are not in that they're a third movie. They're problems with how they were approached by their creators. There's good shit in there in both those cases.
True.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, the first half, which might be for adults, versus the second half, which is
Yeah,
I guess
and you could
generated for toys or kids. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, in both cases, almost. There's a kid's half that sucks, and then there's an adult half that's pretty all right. And if it had more attention, could have been pretty cool.
Are we still talking about Rocky 3?
It was mainly there for
I thought Rocky 3 was unimpeachable, Kenneth.
Rocky
That's
3
what
is
Nolan
a classic.
thinks.
But Nolan missed out on not doing another Batman movie because the best Rocky movie is Rocky 4.
True. Yeah.
And the best Crow movie is the fourth one, as we've covered.
I'm not a huge Last Crusade guy, but a lot of people think that's the best. Indiana.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
It's better than the fourth one.
Yeah, let's talk about the Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. So in the Dark Knight, Chris Nolan, Sir Nolan, I guess they're according to the book by Darren Mooney, Christopher Nolan, the film stuff. He was there was talks to have Heath Ledger come back before he died.
Yes.
And when that happened, he decided he didn't want to, in any way, in his words, Nolan's words, I did not want to in any way try and account for real life tragedy. That seemed inappropriate to me. So they just didn't talk about him in the film.
I think that's even plausible not that they needed to address it. I think that was a great choice, but it's also plausible that he's just in Arkham Asylum, or that something has happened in the many years that have passed between.
The original idea for the story, he was going to come back in some sort of capacity, the same way that the Scarecrow did, with maybe even a slightly bigger role, because Michael Jai White's character was also supposed to return with a bigger storyline in very, very early talks. And apparently they even re-edited the scene where his character dies in The Dark Knight after Heath Ledger's passing to sort of put a tie up that entire storyline so that they couldn't use any of that in a potential sequel.
Fascinating.
Personally, I just feel like Warner Brothers was like, if you want to do Interstellar, you got to do Batman 3. And he was like, yes, sir.
Well, I also think that he and Dame Emma were woken early one morning and there was a dump truck beeping as it backed up to the front lawn, and it had the Warner Brothers logo on it. Bugs Bunny was driving it.
Wait, what was it full of? Can I guess?
Yes.
Was it cash?
Was it Michael Jordan?
It was cash.
Did Michael Jordan pull the lever for Bugs Bunny?
It was it was cash. And then Nolan turned to his wife and said, I think I have an idea for another movie.
Do you know anyone with a couple of airplanes?
About a class war.
So if we could talk about the some of the good things about the movie, maybe the stuff Thomas and I can even agree with.
We'll run through the plot usually before that.
Do you have a synopsis? Oh, this is going to be good.
Oh, man, don't set me up for failure by...
This is going to be the best synopsis the podcast has ever had.
Look, I want to return to doing this in 60 seconds. I think we've gotten sloppy, and so I am going to time myself, and at the end of 60 seconds, we're fucking done, okay?
The floor is yours.
I think they've been epic. I wouldn't say sloppy. I mean,
Bruce Wayne is Howard Hughes, brought back to being the world's greatest detective by Anne Hathaway's stealing of jewels from Wayne Manor. But really, she's after his fingerprints, so she can trade these to crime boss, Wayne Enterprise board member John Daggett for a program that'll erase your identity. But criminal mastermind general contractor Daggett wants to give these fingerprints to super bad guy Bane, no first name, who will use them to make the stock market transactions that will bankrupt Wayne Enterprises because he, or the real child of Ra's al Ghul, who, spoiler for maybe the last 10 minutes of the film, is Marion Cotillard, who wants to maneuver herself onto the board of Wayne Enterprises to learn about a fusion reactor to turn it into a ticking time clock bomb set to go off in 5 months, reduce Gotham to chaos, and break Batman's back. Oh, and there's Robin, and the long shot of Harvey Dent, and Anne Hathaway's actually Catwoman, and Batman's vehicle flies, Scarecrow's a psychotic judge, and there's a lesson about the importance of software updates and patches, especially for autopilot.
Wow. That was like exactly 60 seconds.
Great work.
Yeah, we don't even have to watch the movie now, really.
I didn't.
I would.
just hoping Thomas
I will
was
save you
good
2.5
enough that-
hours. Yeah. So it was good talking to you guys. I will bow out for the rest of this episode.
Yeah, Thomas is going to mute himself while we talk about how much we enjoy The Dark Knight.
Wait,
Yeah, spare us.
Wait, I want to jump on this before Ryan gets to it. Is this a story about psychotherapy, which would be Batman, versus pharmaceuticals, which would be Bane?
Wow.
Because they have two different ways of addressing their pain.
Ooh.
For the first time, I'm going to say that is the most anyone has ever thought about this film. But I like it. It's a good point. The Bane thing, it just reminds me too much of Blue Velvet and like having no actual utility. Like you don't see any medicine, it just seems like kind of a goof. But I like your idea for sure.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time why somebody wouldn't enjoy this. It's got like the best opening of almost any Nolan film, that fucking airplane heist.
And it's
That's
so
fun.
weird and meaningless. It's really like
it's fun and meaningless. Absolutely.
I feel like this was the setup for Tenet. This movie was like this was what he was trying to do. He was trying to do Tenet, and it just didn't work in Batman.
Okay.
I could see how someone doesn't like this movie because it's really dumb, but I don't know.
Well,
I mean, this is
it is the most comic booky, like the most,
No.
and not like
Yes.
a good
No.
comic book, just
It
like a
is.
pulpy.
Yeah.
It
No,
absolutely
you just
is.
It is like a 6-issue miniseries. It's almost pieced in half, where the first half is one story, and then there's a cliffhanger at the end of the third one, and then the last 3 issues is completely different, almost a completely different plot.
You're saying it's like comic books if you got like a bunch of different artists to come in and color it and draw it and write it?
What are you talking about? This is like one of the most technically amazing films of the 21st century. What are you talking about?
Oh, it just
It's a
sounded
gorgeous looking movie.
No, it just feels like it's different. We give it this. Batman does rise in the film. He rises out of a hole.
Is that your hot take?
Wow. Okay.
They had bat nipples in Schumacher. Why can't they have bat scrotum?
That's what I'm saying. Thomas, just to be clear, I think it's totally legitimate to think that this is a bad film, or at least not a good one.
Agree.
I just happen to enjoy it, but I enjoy a lot of bad films. So
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say objectively, this is a fine blockbuster film, and it's probably better than 9 out of 10 of any of the Marvel movies that came after it.
Agree.
Oh, see, but I'm a Marvel boy, or I was for the 20 film run. So
I mean, like ice skating, you have to take away the high score and the low score before you get the score. So The Dark Knight's obviously the high score for superhero movies, and the low score is probably no, what is it? What's the low score?
You almost said Ghost Rider, but then you looked at me.
And then I said, "Oh, wait a second, I loved Ghost Rider." Shit. What's the worst comic book movie? That's the low score.
It's not Steel. That one's pretty good.
No,
I mean, I think there's a good
bad.
case to be made for Eternals as the worst comic book movie.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take away the Dark Knight and the Eternals, and everything else is you can compare them as superhero comic book movies. This one's still pretty far up the list.
I would say this is my favorite of the trilogy, and it's probably my number 2 or 3 favorite Nolan. But I would also say it's objectively incredibly stupid and politically
Nightmarish.
Yes, that's the perfect word to describe it. But I don't think any of that matters in the end, which we'll get to.
Nuh-uh.
Well, I'm curious what you enjoy about it, Jack.
I saw it when I was 8, and I came out of the theater, and I was like, that's the best movie I've ever seen.
Okay.
No, it's awesome. I mean, it's almost 3 hours long, and it's so it almost takes The Dark Knight as a challenge of how dense and incomprehensible it can get with all of its intertwining, meaningless plot lines, and it just is bookended and littered with some of the most ridiculous, stupid, lizard brain satisfying action set pieces that have ever been attempted to be made in film history.
Okay.
And it's not cohesive. It doesn't all work, but it's immensely satisfying.
I think narratively, it's also a huge risk to make a blockbuster that is so fucking weird, where the second half of the movie is basically like some 19th century city under siege, and it takes place in 2012. It is bonkers that they would attempt it, and that it's as entertaining as it is.
What you're saying is like attributes intent. I mean, I guess I can't really buy that Nolan just doesn't give a shit. I just don't understand how he got this script and was like, yes, good film, let's do it. But at the same time, I do think it would be unfair. I don't really think any director walks on the set for, a year and is like, oh, I'm just here for the paycheck. But and Nolan least of all. But it does feel, of all of his films, it feels like the one that is phoned in.
I think, well, I mean, compared to the Batman Begins, which this also serves as a pretty good sequel to, because of all the plot lines they bring back. It's far superior to that, both in script, acting, execution. Not as much stupid dialogue in it.
Bane, I mean, they fixed Bane for home theater, but Bane was unintelligible in the theater. Like, it was like there was no Batman was talking to a brick wall. Like, it was very my experience in the theater of this movie was borderline incoherent, because Bane would walk on screen and just be like,
well, that's fine, because this is my huge take on this, is that this is a silent movie. I think this is Nolan wanting to make a silent movie and not being able to. And I've seen theories on the internet that this is Metropolis, like a remake of Metropolis, and I had never seen Metropolis before, so I watched it earlier this week, and this is almost an exact retelling of Metropolis, but with superheroes, and it's actually ridiculous how close it gets to that story. With the underground city and the people, the one person telling everyone to rise up, but then they end up destroying everything, and the flooding, and the one person that needs to come and be the mediator between them, which is Batman in this. It's almost like if you watched this movie with the sound off and you were playing some sort of orchestral silent movie score, it would work a lot better. And I don't know if Nolan was intentionally doing that, but that's my take.
I did watch I'm not into I understand thematically why this movie has the two big action scenes are punchy, but that I think those are boring. So when that started, I switched the movie to black and white, and it looked so good. And then without even thinking about it, Jack, afterwards I came down to my computer and I was working on music, and I put on Metropolis, and I was like, wow, this looks a lot like Batman. Whoa. But it was not at all conscious. I haven't watched Metropolis in 10 years. So the fact that I wanted to put it on is a little, but maybe speaks to your point.
Fritz Lang's also a director who really learned how to, by the time of Metropolis, be a master of fight scenes. He got a lot of feedback early on that his fight scenes weren't as convincing, and the editing was poor on him. So he really worked on it for Metropolis. So I'm glad that you were able to call that out.
I don't understand. Okay, Thomas, we have to go back a little bit to the Nicolas Cage season and your outsized outpouring of love for a movie called Face Off, which I think both Jack and I argued as being so dumb that it's not good. I would argue that Dark Knight Rises is 10 times the film and 10 times the dumb of Face Off, and also works in every way that Face Off does not.
Ken, you're weakening our side, man. We got to stick together.
No, I'm sticking to the Face Off being terrible.
No, Face Off is so much better than this movie.
No way.
It is
in so many ways. In so many ways. It's not. Nolan can acknowledge that he is making a junky thing, and that really holds back you know.
Are you kidding? Every time Anne Hathaway opens her mouth and has a quip, it's him admitting, okay, well, this is the expectation, and this is what I'm going to give. She's going to have double entendres.
Those are the best parts
and,
of the movie.
and that's Nolan admitting what he is making.
Okay.
I'm just saying that, like, if I don't think he's capable of like going off the chain, like giving us some real Tim Burton penguin floating around in a rubber ducky type business, but this was the time and place if he was ever going to really give it a go.
But doesn't that, I feel like that elevates it, where this is a borderline insane, takes himself super seriously, super serious British man with hundreds of millions of dollars, gleefully smashing action figures together and blowing shit up, but he won't crack a smile. He'll never admit that that's why he's doing it.
Right? This is what I'm saying.
But I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what makes it great.
Okay. Here, I mean, just to give my take on what you guys are already talking about, I think it's the title itself is lazy, right? Like, The Dark Knight was a good second. Batman Begins is interesting. Like, oh, what? And then, like, what? Okay, so we're gonna take the old title and we're gonna put Rises against it. I think this should have been called, like, I don't know, Batman Retires. Because I think that if you called it Batman Retires, it fits thematically, right? The whole trajectory of the film is for him to retire. And it also feels like it's made by somebody who's a retiree who's like calling you in the middle of the workday because they can't remember, like, oh yeah, I guess you worked during the middle of the day. They just kind of like lost sense of time and retelling stories, and they just need like more social interaction. More purpose in their life. And so this feels like a very aimless movie that I agree, Jack. Like, there's stuff that I really like. And I like Anne Hathaway's performance in it, right? I like a lot of elements to this. And I guess that leads me to a question. I don't think it has any room to breathe. Okay. So like, I really like that somebody's willing to go down with the plane because it was supposed to be a body in it. In that first scene, I like this like idea of a cult, right? But we don't really get much to it, and that might be the action figures kind of bouncing against each other. So I'm curious, like, would you give up the next two movies, like Interstellar and Dunkirk, for a Robin movie and a Catwoman movie as a lead up to this film, and then there would be like actual films that kind of made sense? And he would have time to make them? Or are you perfectly fine with the effect of this film, which feels to me like a mashup of a bunch of, like Kim was even saying, like a bunch of different issues of a comic book kind of smashed together?
Yeah. That's what's great about it.
So you're saying that's a feature, not a bug?
I do. No, yeah, I do, because particularly now, in my Letterboxd review, please follow me,
Ken Coral on Letterboxd,
or Ken Coral on Panscan, the superior version of Letterboxd. That if you took the entire script at the point where Bane, spoiler, breaks Batman's back, and fed that into ChatGPT and said, write me the second half finale of this movie, there is zero chance any AI in the world would write what the second half of this movie becomes.
And I think that they should take over because of that.
No, that's what makes it amazing, though, because it totally gives you something. And the first time I was watching, I was like, what the fuck? Because the first part of the movie is fairly compressed. It's great. And then once you get to his back broken, it's like the rest of the movie is like 3.5 months long, and like a warhead or a nuclear something is degrading and it's going to blow up
like a video game.
like a video game, and it's so fucking weird. But I love it. I love the shit of Batman in the underground prison in the middle of Morocco or wherever, and he gets out and is back home. He got across the river. It's so I love everything about it, because nothing about it is what I expected the first time, and I think the first time I saw it, I was disappointed. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, that's fucking great. He's giving you something you didn't know you necessarily wanted or even needed.
Or that any sane person would ever make.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And it was Ryan was saying earlier about not being able to picture Nolan Unleashed. I think this is as close as you get. Because who the fuck does this except somebody who has all
Something
the
wrong with
cachet?
them.
Yeah, all the cachet he has from The Dark Knight and Inception, and people still went and saw this. It made a shit ton of money.
Yeah, I guess it's the question is, how does somebody make this film and still have a job? Like, is able to make movies afterwards?
Because it made a lot of money, and this
And it's fucking great.
everybody knew that he was everybody knew that he owed quote unquote Warner Brothers this movie so that he could get Interstellar off the ground, and then that he was kind of done with Batman and with IP. He made his intentions known that he was moving on to these bigger and better projects. But to go back to what you're saying, Ken, I mean, for me, and I guess we'll get into this more next week, the main problem with this movie is that there's an obvious sequel to The Dark Knight that for some reason is the last 20 minutes of that movie instead of being an entire film, which is how, my man Harvey needed his day in court is all I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and The Dark Knight Rises should have been Harvey Dent Rises, that's what I'm talking about. Two-Face Rises, that's the movie I wanted to see.
Didn't he die at the end of?
Yeah, because everything after the truck flip is like a hat on a hat in the previous film in this series.
Okay. So I didn't watch this as an 8-year-old. I was closer to 38 at the time. And I hated every moment of, and not because necessarily Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but of the John Blake character. There wasn't a second of him being on screen that I was interested in. I looked it up afterwards. I was like, oh, did this movie invent the fasci cut because of his haircut? And no, apparently there was a group in Germany in the late 20s into the 30s called the Nazis who originated that. So that's a little Wikipedia information for you.
He did not have white
No.
supremacist high, and that no, you're getting the thinking.
He doesn't have the punch a Nazi cut.
Yeah, it's just a military police high and tight.
Sure,
so-
whatever it is, I hate it. I hate the character. As soon as he comes on the film, I'm like, oh fuck, he's gonna be Robin, and this is terrible. Until throughout, and it'd be great to maybe have that be its own movie. Have a movie of the cops being stuck underground.
Mm.
I just went back and reread some of Road to No Man's Land, where the earthquake happens, and a lot of the second half draws some inspiration from that in the 90s. And there's some great stories. Like every other story in there is pretty good because it's by Alan Grant, and he's writing it like it's a Judge Dredd story. Like there's a story in there where this dad is playing with his son and tossing him up in the air, then drops him, and his son is crippled and can't speak and can't move. And it takes him to the hospital and gets him back out, and then eventually there's he's just so upset he's losing his job. There's criminals coming in trying to rub to extort money from him because he owns a deli. And the end of the story is basically he sees these fireworks, the kid speaks for the first time, and he's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And then the earthquake happens and the kid falls out of his chair and to his death. And that's the end of the story. and it's really fucking dark. And it's this weird 2000 AD sensibility to a Batman comic. But
shame on you, Sir Christopher, for not including that.
I know, exactly. But there's it doesn't feel like there's any real threat. Yes, Scarecrow's scary. Walking on the ice is scary, but it doesn't the depravity is not quite there. Maybe I want to have a whole movie about the cops being underground for 6 months. There's another one that he writes in there, which is a Tales from the Crypt kind of, where these rich people are all stuck underground and they're drawing straws for who's going to have to eat that, be the person who gets eaten. There's no, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
those are all those are all different stories.
They are. They're a
He,
story that doesn't include Batman getting his back realigned with a rope by Albert Einstein
I do think
in a hole.
I do think I do think I get where you're coming from, Thomas. I think and kind of why I think Tenet is a better achievement along these lines for Sir Chris. It feels like he really wants to get dangerous with the story. There's a lot of like assassinations and terrorist attacks and stuff like that, but he doesn't have, I don't think, the writ from Warner Brothers to really make like an R-rated scary movie. But he can't help playing with that stuff. You know, I think he alludes to darker elements of what's going on, but he can't get into it too deep because of either he doesn't want to look at it or the company running the multi-billion-dollar franchise doesn't want to look at that stuff.
He did stick to his guns though about the 5 months, because they did push back on him and like, wait, there's a span of 5 months in this movie where they're just waiting around for a bomb to go off, and he's like, yeah. But if you look at Harry Potter, Harry Potter just does this cut, and they're all of a sudden in winter. So yeah, it'll work.
The scariest thing about a group of suicidal terrorists taking over one of the biggest cities in the continental U.S. for 5 months is that a kid gets harassed over stealing an apple because he's hungry, like a Charles Dickens character.
Oh, so we watched some of the special features, and production-wise, this is like top tier studio filmmaking toys made by a great director. The Bat Pod, the practical sets, the airplane heist at the starting.
Oh yeah,
phenomenal. But there's also the scene that really starts the takeover of Gotham, when the little kid is singing the national anthem, and then the kickoff of the football game, and then the field implodes. Was filmed at Heinz Field at Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh.
Shout out.
And you guys don't know anything about football, but I did reach out to friend of the podcast, Eric Vanderwolf, who's a huge Steelers fan and currently hates everything about the coaches and the team. So I asked him for some jokes that you guys wouldn't get.
Oh, this is going to be good.
So one of the jokes is Mike Tomlin, the current coach, would have gotten an extension after that game, even though every player but one dies, because at least they didn't technically lose. Another joke, former Steelers head coach Bill Cowher was on the sideline playing the Gotham coach in the movie, and even though nearly every player dies horrifically, it was still a better game plan than Matt Canada ever had. You guys don't get it, but trust me, it's funny.
Is Matt Canada a real person, or is
yes,
that like Rob Hollywood?
Yes. Mike Tomlin, the current coach, actually auditioned to play the Gotham coach on the sideline, but in the script, it called for a team winning a playoff game. Thank you, Eric. Those are the Pittsburgh Steeler joke segment of today's episode.
And we just, Pittsburgh just went dark for your listeners there. Yeah, so this was shot in Pittsburgh, LA, New York, and Chicago. They used for Gotham.
And Scotland for the airplane.
And Scotland for the airplane, yeah. But it still doesn't, I guess you guys will cover The Dark Knight, how they just completely abandoned the Gotham aesthetic that they built for Batman Begins in favor of just making Heat, but with Batman. And this one, I feel like, goes back to, not only because it acts more as a direct sequel to Batman Begins with the Ra's al Ghul stuff and the prison and the aesthetic of that sort of segment of the movie, but I really do feel like this harkens back to Batman Begins a lot more than The Dark Knight does in terms of just being a comic book movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost feel like this is the last good comic book movie for kids. And I'm not a kid anymore, so I guess I don't know. But if I was like showing movies to a kid and I was like, okay, well, we watched,
Punisher, Warzone.
Yeah. This would be, because this was like my favorite superhero when I was 8. And I just feel like this is like one of the last ones, at least, where it's great, amazing filmmaking, but it's so simple in the good guys versus bad guys, ridiculously redundant in how simplistic it is. The cops are the good guys, and then there's the terrorists and the bad guys, and then they run at each other. So fucking
ridiculous. And then the one cop who has doubts,
and then he
changes
shows up,
his mind, and then
gets his hero moment. that you can really show this to a kid, and not only is it great filmmaking for adult people like us, but a kid could totally understand this because it's on the same level storytelling wise. Maybe not storytelling wise, but in the way it presents its politics as something like Batman the Animated Series or Justice League Unlimited, where it's terrorists versus good guys.
Yeah.
Which of you pissed off Brandon Lee? You guys
Oh.
hearing the crows in the background or
Yeah.
not?
Oh yeah, they're outside our window.
We have a murder of crows. Should we close the window?
Yeah, you can close the window. Okay, we're pausing. So if you guys want to say something funny, I'll try and keep it in. You can start now.
Are they saying anything funny?
You have to open the window a little bit and then pull the fan out. Yeah, we've had this murder of crows outside our window for the last week. And when I ride my bike to work, and when I go out in the morning,
Well, they got him. It was
They
an
got
epic
him.
battle. It happened
All right.
off screen.
yeah, never mind. All right, let's start over.
The whole podcast.
You know what? That might not be a bad idea.
Episode 1. Clint Eastwood.
No, I think what Jack was saying reminded me of like when my kids were very little, Jack and his sister. I would show them movies that I knew were at least what I felt was like solid filmmaking, solid foundational filmmaking, where if it's a good movie, it gives the kid a foundation. So when they watch other movies, they have some frame of reference when they're deciding what's good and what's bad. And I think this movie, like Jack was saying, I think on all levels, it's so technically well made, and it looks so beautiful as like a real vibrant, alive film. That when you compare it to something else that came out in the same year,
Like the Avengers.
like The Avengers, made by sexist, canceled Joss Whedon, creator and executive producer of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sorry, Thomas. Which has not aged well at all. It looks so terrible if you have tried to watch it in the last 5 years. That, filmgoers had a choice, and they decided to go with the stuff that made them feel good at the moment, that looked like crap and had quips. Such is life.
Well,
Sorry, I had to ding your guy.
yeah. I mean, he's a good writer, good director, and I think that there's something to say about this movie is good filmmaking, as far as on a technical level, right? It looks great. I think, again, going back to Anne Hathaway, anytime she's on screen, like her greatest superpower as Catwoman is her ability to act, right? I mean, she's able to play everybody off of each other, and just switch on a dime and bring tears or brings status or whatever it needs to be in the moment, which is great. And she also figures out that one way of defeating a super tough person is to shoot them with a fucking gun from your motorcycle. Like, who knew Bane's only weakness is to shoot him in the chest with a giant bore gun? Who would have thought of that? Nobody, except for a cat burglar who.
Well, not Mr. No guns, no killing.
Whoa.
There is
Christian Bale?
Yes.
There's some stuff to really like in this film, right? Like the idea that Bruce Wayne has become the Howard Hughes, which shout out, or I guess wink to the script and the movie that was never made with Jim Carrey, the Howard Hughes movie. There's the idea that, like, as dumb as Bane's face thing is, it's an inverse of what Batman has, right? So Batman, like, the only thing you can see is his mouth, whereas Bane, you can see everything but his mouth. That's, I guess, kind of interesting. That he got his face torn apart for helping a child escape, maybe, and then he's in pain forever and has, I don't know, fentanyl in his mask. That's kind of stupid, but I mean, aesthetically, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better than trying to do that luchador mask, maybe, from the comic books.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah.
Ryan, are you here still?
Ryan, can you hear us? We've lost Ryan.
Yeah, I think we lost Ryan.
Man. Okay. Well, we're going to pause here.
We're going to take a break.
I'm going to take a quick break.
Should he disconnect and rejoin?
No, but he did.
Oh no. That doesn't ruin the whole recording, does it?
I don't know.
Yeah, Bane's mask, pretty cool. You're right, Thomas. Perfect stitch.
The eagle-eared listener might have noticed that we had a technical difficulty, but Jack, from years of editing this podcast, knew exactly how to stitch that right together. Yeah, I mean, both. He breaks Bruce Wayne's or Batman's mask, and then Batman then breaks his mask. But Batman doesn't need his mask because he has an alter ego, whereas Bane does not.
Wait. I thought Selena Kyle told him that his real mask was Bruce Wayne. Batman was the real him.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, that's been said a lot in Batman lore, hasn't it?
Bane killed Batman, and then Bruce Wayne came back.
So it should be called Bruce Wayne Rises.
The Wayne Rises.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne
Wayne Manor Rises. Hosted
Thomas, do you also think License to Kill should have been released in America as License Revoked? Do you think that's a much better title? The Philosopher's Stone, excuse me?
So I'm sorry, guys. My head's spinning because I'm still trying to figure out what we all agree that the Robin character, whatever.
No,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I like Robin. I was frankly and honestly disappointed that there wasn't a Robin sequel where he became the new Batman. I thought that was a great setup.
You liked his arc. You like, oh, I was an orphan, and we have this Batman signal that we draw.
Yeah.
And my buddies are working underground for something.
Yeah.
And I'm no architect, but I know I can see a pattern. And I'm a cop. And I do cop stuff, and we got to get these orphans across this bridge. I guess there's other people, but really it's the orphans. Oh, and that cop just shot at me, even though he told me not to cross the thing, and I have to throw my badge away.
Everything
now.
You're saying is as dumb as everything else that happens.
Okay, then I think it's a house of cards. It all falls.
Because what saves his entire story is he throws away the badge at the end. He Dirty Harry's it.
Yeah.
Because one thing that really bothers me about this movie that hasn't aged well is the simplistic portrayal of the cops.
Well,
but one thing that because they're not dressed in like heavy military garb like modern cops, they don't have like swastikas on their arms. They're really dressed like beat cops from like the 1950s, twirling their little baton, walking up and down the street. They're movie cops
because the presumption is there's no more crime in Gotham, right? Like they're public service workers again.
Yeah,
there is crime. So the interesting thing about this film, moderately, is that there still is crime, but it's like white collar crime, probably, right?
Yeah,
and
real crime.
And then everything that Batman does in the first movie is his vigilantism is the thing that kind of destroys Gotham. If he took Ra's al Ghul and I'm pulling actually from Darren Mooney's book on Nolan for some of these theories or some of this narrative. But if Batman had taken Ra's al Ghul off the train and had him punished through the court of law, then maybe his daughter wouldn't be coming after him and trying to destroy Gotham at the same time. If he didn't have military grade equipment that he's profiting from, and then just have it all storehoused or warehoused, then Bane wouldn't have it to give the occupants of Arkham Asylum when he lets them out, or the prison, or wherever he lets out. So like everything that Batman's done is kind of like allowed for the bad stuff to happen, including being Oppenheimer, right? If he didn't create the bomb that he knows is not safe to like release into the public yet, but if he didn't do that, then there wouldn't be a bomb.
I think that's also tied to the class stuff in the film, because all the death of Gotham, as it were, is also avoidable from that sense. Peace didn't have to mean that the rich then immediately began exploiting the poor. That was just how they chose to do it, And the movie does point out that Bruce Wayne has not been helping in that sense either. He's not been living it up, but he hasn't been supporting his charitable causes. He hasn't been keeping up his end of the bargain as a steward of the city.
I think every time I've watched this, I actually, for a good chunk of the middle of the movie, I actually am kind of rooting for Bane.
Yeah.
There's the moment where it's like, we're just going to let this bomb degrade for 3 months or whatever, and it's going to destroy the city. Then I'm like, I'm kind of not on his side anymore. But up to that point, when he's fucking with like young Glenn Powell at fucking Wall Street, it's great.
Or when he puts the back of his hand very gently on Ben Mendo's shoulder and says, "You feel in charge.
You feel in charge."
Yeah. I mean,
or when he shoots that guy who's one of his underlings for failing to follow Gordon, he's like, follow him. And yeah, that's fun too, right? Just randomly killing people. I'm
no,
down
but he
with
was
that.
like, how do I follow him? Well, you do the same thing he did, get shot and go into the sewer. That's perfectly logical, Thomas.
It is. You're right.
Bane is attempting to get, and I know that we already know your all's feelings about the MCU, but I think Black Panther nailed the Bane character much better in that instance. Michael B. Jordan is persuasive and does change the society permanently. Like at the end of this movie, Bane is just
Black Panther has sex with Bane perfectly.
Well, I would argue that I actually don't even think there's a point to trying to analyze the politics of this movie, because I feel like it's actually gleefully unoccupied with any of the troubling implications of any of this. And a lot of that comes with being a kid's movie. Like, they're talking about the Dent Act. Yeah. The Dent Act cleaned up the streets by locking up these criminals without parole. And you as a kid go, okay, yeah, all the bad guys are in jail. But then you start thinking about that and you're like, oh, that's really gross.
I mean, I sort of agree with you 100%, Jack, but Nolan's reputation means that this movie is, and to kind of the way Thomas is taking it apart at the joints, because it's a Nolan movie, it does invite serious reading and criticism. And whether I don't necessarily, I think your reading is correct, but there are a lot of people out there who think this is a very serious, picture, and for better or worse.
Including the person who allowed Wayne Enterprises they moved it from the Richard Daley Center, right, or something like that, in the second one to a tower in New York.
Trump Tower.
Oh
yeah.
So, Jack, I want to ask you if you can go back to when you're 8 years old.
Wow. No,
this?
don't.
No, wait,
I like you now. I like you now.
Yeah, you seem like a cool guy. I don't think we need to
mind game, man. Go back, and what is, like, I always think of like propaganda now. I've never thought of propaganda before 2020. I watch a lot of the politics in this movie, which is very muddled. It's like all over the place. Some of it's like very righteous, and some of it's like, wait a second, are you making fun of righteous and you actually don't like it? And what are your thoughts about social structures, policing, and whatnot as an 8-year-old? What does an 8-year-old come out of this thinking? Is it gonna reinforce like propaganda stuff? Does not move the needle?
I don't think so, because I think it's very much in line with the Justice League Unlimited series sort of stuff, and the comics I was reading at the time, where like Superman will beat Lex Luthor and then he'll tie him up and throw him in front of the police station, and then the beat cops wipe the sweat off their foreheads and they're like, "Wow, good work, Superman!"
Yeah,
give him the key to the city. I mean, that's really what it is, just made by, like I said, a complete maniac with hundreds of millions of dollars to star. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was thinking that much about it when I was 8, rather than wanting to get the bat plane toy for my birthday.
Did you?
But I don't know if it was for my birthday that year, but I did get the bat plane.
Did you have to steal it?
I did have to steal it. Yeah, just like that kid had to steal an apple to survive in the movie.
That poor fucking guy.
Yeah, he totally destroyed a Toys R Us, which is no longer here.
R.I.P.
But he opened the doors to all little kids and said, "Fellow children, this store is ours."
But watching it now, it really reminded me of another movie that I saw recently called Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. And without actually spoiling that one, because I know not everyone has seen that, there's a very brilliant part of that movie where the bad guy gives an overtly socialist speech and then really what he actually wants to do is the complete opposite of that. And I think that that's maybe one of the only interesting political components of this movie that you could maybe analyze and get anything from it is Bane's speech, where he's talking about taking back the city and all these people that Harvey Dent and Batman and Gordon lied and locked up, that they should take back the city and it's theirs. And then once you get that flash forward, it's actually not the case, that everyone is still living under oppression. So it's like this revolution of changing the system. He's going to give it back to them, but it's really just power for him.
It's the populist rhetoric that gets people riled up, and then it all ends up the same people are still the people getting all the money.
Well,
nothing changes.
He was in Bane's mind, right? They're going to blow up Gotham, and then that's going to help the rest of the world. So he is lying to the Gothamites, but ostensibly he has this greater wholesome plan for humanity.
Well, because Ra's al Ghul's plan didn't work because of that fucking billionaire Thomas Wayne building a monorail, which apparently fell apart after 2005. So this was their new plan with Bane.
Yeah, and it's not even his plan. It's Talia al Ghul's plan, right? With that oddly timed reveal.
It's fucking great. It's fucking great. Shut up.
I love the real.
No, I mean, the movie lost. So the movie pretty much lost me in the theaters as soon as Robin was introduced. And then I'd kind of come back a little bit for Catwoman, and then she kind of disappears. And, everything in the whole was dumb as shit to me. And then I put both my middle fingers up and was about to walk out of the theater, but then I realized I only had like an extra 10 minutes after Talia's revealed. Right.
Yeah.
And because it undermines my whole understanding of Bane's motivation up until that point was that he was kicked out of the League of Shadows. And so he wanted to one up Ra's al Ghul maybe, or show that he was, and maybe didn't quite believe in the same thing as the League of Shadows, but it would just show him because he's a bit of an orphan himself. But no, that's not quite what the film is. It's like a revenge story, maybe. And would Bane die when the bomb exploded? It would seem like that would be the case.
Yeah, they're all gonna die. That's why they are, as Michael Caine keeps reminding us, they are true believers. They're gonna die and destroy Gotham, and they think that the world will be better afterwards. That was silly in Batman Begins, and it's silly now, but it is the motive of our villains.
And I think that I always think of when a villain has a plan and it's revealed. As a writer, I always try and think of, okay, well, what's the discussion of the plan before the story started? And it is really hard to imagine Bane and Talia al Ghul sitting down having a burger, and she's like, and then you use populist propaganda and you make them think that the city is theirs. And he's like, how long? It might be through winter. Do I need a coat?
Do you imagine they're sitting around with their feet propped up on the table and there's empty containers of Chinese food around them?
Yes. And he's making notes.
But does he eat?
No,
he must. Look at how fucking big he is.
He had to put lifts in his shoes because Hardy's 5'9", which is normal. It's fine. But in order to look more imposing around the other actors, so he wore 3-inch lifts in his boots.
And he's not that bulky of a guy, Tom Hardy, but they just shoot him with the camera.
He put out 30 pounds of beef for this movie. Pure great.
I do think they don't go fully through with the underlying subtext about the way the legends and the myths grow, but I got the feeling that by this one, Bane is basically supernatural. He's not. That's why his voice is so weird in the movie and overwhelms the rest of the audio whenever he's talking, and he doesn't need to eat. He doesn't need to sleep. He can't be hurt.
Yeah, he's basically the villain version of what villains think Batman is, as the supernatural legendary force.
He's like Jason, but he monologues.
And to go back to that reveal scene, I don't care how silly it is, because it's ridiculously silly, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But the thing that Nolan has always been so great about, besides besides cutting away from a stupid line of dialogue before you can think about it too much, is like almost overwhelming you with emotion and doing it, especially with a Hans Zimmer score, which this is like one of his best. And that scene really works because it's sad. It's kind of sad, that reveal and the flashback to him getting his face all mauled and whatever, and then the look in his eyes when she's talking about him and he's like almost crying. It's like, that's kind of sweet for a big psychopathic monster.
Yeah, and I do really like that he gives them both that last minute of humanity, you know.
Yes.
They really have been shit on by the world, and their desire for revenge is righteous, if a little misguided.
I guess.
Yeah. Agreed.
And then Nolan doesn't really to go to that point, he doesn't give her a great last moment on Earth as a character and as an actress. Have you guys heard about this? How upset she was about that take that they used for her death scene?
No.
Because it is terrible. It is like her closing her eyes and going, ugh.
It really is.
She was reportedly not very happy with that.
That's why they didn't do a
Robin movie.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say Inception 2, but yeah,
right.
Inceptions. This has an amazing cast, as all Nolan movies, I think, after The Dark Knight on, all have almost unimpeachably great casts. Every scene, I was like, turn to Jack, it's like, oh my God, there's so many great actors in this movie. There's Ben Mendelsohn. And Jack was like, yeah, shut up, Dad. And then, Liam Neeson shows up and he's like,
as
a Force ghost.
Force ghost.
He's a Jedi, I guess, so that makes sense.
Yep. And Michael Caine, we haven't even mentioned Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. I failed you, Master Bruce. That was the worst Michael Caine I've ever heard. What is he doing in that?
That's just the sound of him crying. That's the sound of him trying to cry.
I smell burnt toast, Master Bruce.
Michael Caine's amazing in this. He's in like 3 scenes, and he's like the best part of the movie.
I mean,
man!
Great actor,
he's
for sure.
so fucking good when he's crying at the grave
Everybody has like a letter that they either wrote but aren't gonna read, or get burned. I think people really trust that. It's like, I have a letter here. It's no way I forged this and wrote it myself. I'm not going to show it to you.
Yeah, he doesn't even
but
show
it's
you
Commissioner
the
Gordon
language.
saying Harvey Dent was a dick. It's what? He said he was besties with him. What are we going to do? Let's riot. And then, hypothetically, Master Wayne, there might have been a letter that said something that she would like Harvey Dent more than you, and I burned it. And then the reactions, devastating.
It is really interesting how well these 2 movies work, The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, even if you're not a fan, Thomas, sorry. When the impetus of Batman's whole character arc is basically like this schoolyard romance. Yeah. I like Harvey better than you. No.
You're fired, Alfred.
He's more. I don't know why people complained about Robert Pattinson emo Batman. This is the most emo Batman has ever been, even if he doesn't have hair.
Did people not like Robert Pattinson Batman? I like. I didn't like the movie very much, but I liked him.
So is he and Talia al Ghul? Is that the only nookie Bruce Wayne gets in these 3 movies?
Thomas? Yeah, I guess till the end with Catwoman.
With Catwoman, yeah,
in the future,
in the dream sequence.
What? The ending's not a dream sequence.
You don't think so?
Well, did the top stop spinning though?
Yeah.
We'll never know.
Think about it.
I think it swerves at the end, and I think it stops actually right before it.
I think it collides with another top like Beyblades.
Tony is dead, and the top stops spinning. That's just. I'm sorry.
We're sorry. We're sorry, Bruce. We can only grow corn now. It looks like the camera is like, what? To be continued. Am I right? Catwoman's going into space.
Oh, another thing that there's a lot of in this and The Dark Knight, which you guys are covering later, is besides hypothetical letters and may or may not be forged letters. There's a lot of Alfred, and there's like some jokey, quippy stuff back and forth with Alfred and Bruce. That's a lot of fun. It's like, yeah, they've known each other for years. And then Alfred will immediately go from that to like the most serious he's ever been.
Yes.
And it reminds you of like trying to tell like your parent a joke and then they get really serious and lecture you on it. That's basically Alfred in this movie.
Oh, I think that's my daughter's experience of us as parents.
Uh-huh.
Like, hey guys, look at this goof. And we're like, actually, serious goof. Let's talk about it.
I like that Bruce Wayne walks like he actually needed the cane. I thought it was going to be an affectation in the very beginning of the movie, and then he goes to see the dude from the state, and he's like, "No, you have no cartilage."
Oh, he said, "I've seen worse cartilage." That's because you don't have any. Yeah, he's hilarious.
But I like that idea of like, yeah, this would be Bruce Wayne later in life and needing to hang up the cowl. And Alfred's 100% right. And it's not quite that movie because he has a leg brace that lets him kick through walls.
Well, one thing I was watching this movie is the new season of a TV show or movie, the status quo being reestablished. Where at the end of the last one or at the starting of the new one, whatever the status quo is broken up. And so until it's reestablished, you're kind of biding time waiting for it. So you're basically waiting for Batman to become Batman again because he is. I think Nolan did a great job of not making me wanting to jump to that in this because I think the first 45 minutes of this movie are fine.
Yeah.
I never got the feeling like it's like looking at my watch saying, I know he's going to be Batman again, so stop teasing us. But it really felt like like you were saying, Thomas, it should have been called The Retirement of Batman. It really felt like somebody who didn't want to
agree with him.
No, it's like they keep pulling me back in. It's like it's somebody who wants to and is already, and everything he wanted to do was achieved. And then it all kind of comes apart and he has to. I think dramatically and narratively, I think the Nolans do a fine job of establishing that.
Yeah.
So and it all works with the character we've seen in the first movie.
I mean, I think one interesting thing about this, and I'm drawing from some of the research I did, is that it is when we decided to do the third movie as not a standalone, because the first two, yes, there's the Joker card at the end of Batman Begins, but you could watch each of those films without having to watch the one that preceded it. They don't necessarily inform each other until this film, but this is definitely like the conclusion of Batman in a time of Avengers, where things were getting bigger and were more like a comic book in the sense of multiple creators working on it and handing it over to different people. And this is a nice contained universe that I do feel that it's as much as I appreciate that in an era of IP. And I mean, Whedon got upset about the Avengers because there were so many notes from the studio and so many things he had to bend to, especially by the time he was making Age of Ultron. Nolan's at a place where he can make bad decisions like this film, and it still goes onto screen. Yeah, and so I guess I kind of miss that we're not talking about Warner Brothers right now forcing these things to happen, and we're talking about Nolan's choices.
Yeah,
I mean, those notes for Whedon were like, do we need another scene of Black Widow falling on one of the male characters again? It's like 4 times in the script, Joss. Come on, dude.
I mean, to your point, Thomas, and not to nerd out too much, but I mean, that's you guys. The presumption that you guys carry, I think a lot of the times is that so much of what we're seeing is a conscious choice by the filmmaker and looking at the movie that way. But yeah, a lot of this is corporate mechanics. Nolan is the rare exception in that he has asserted himself as like, I am a super auteur. You will bow down to me like you do Tarantino and a few other guys. But
Tarantino couldn't get a $200 million movie made.
If he would agree to a PG-13 rating, I think he could.
Oh, I mean, we're getting academic now. I do feel like the film, just to reiterate, doesn't take enough time with its elements. And there's things that I would want to see that just kind of like jumps to the next thing.
Yeah.
I would have loved to seen perhaps a waiter, or maybe Bruce is at Hermes or Burberry, and the salesperson there cuts his credit card in half because he doesn't have any money.
Yeah, because
Or he's struggling to do his own laundry, and because Alfred's left, and he has to like battle a washing machine that seems to come to life, or like a vacuum cleaner, like Mr. Mom. Like,
Yeah.
great scenes.
That's a whole other movie.
that's true.
But it seems like they do this, like, it's so brief, right? Okay, I don't have any money except for I can do anything I want. My back's broken. I will just not use a rope and somehow get to the top there, carrying a rope with me so I can let the prisoners out. Like, it should just, like, it's hard for me to vibe with something that really doesn't make as much sense as this, in a way that's still trying to make sense, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Versus maybe Face Off.
Well, Thomas, let me ask you a question, and I know you guys are saving this for next week or whenever, so you don't have to answer, but are you a fan of The Dark Knight then?
I am.
Or not? Interesting. Okay.
So, you know what?
Wait. I mean, and we'll talk about this in 2 weeks. I am, but not like a stan, right? I do have problems with that film, especially in the last act.
Not enough speedboat chases.
To your point, Thomas,
True.
there literally is a scene in this movie where he goes to do a meeting and they say, you have no money, and he goes outside and his fancy car is being towed. Like, that's how that works in real life.
Yes.
Yeah. He was leased.
And you have no money. Wait. You have no money because someone stole your fingerprint and then went to the stock exchange where you have to have the fingerprint to do stock transaction.
Uh-huh.
And then the program went through, even though they needed a few more minutes for it to go through. And you chased them down, and that's why Bane got away, is because you were there.
Yeah, it may clear itself out with an investigation. That's going to be a while. Plus, we got to see young Glenn Powell get beat up. That was awesome.
It's pretty fun.
You were talking about Alan Grant earlier, and as we've watched these Nolans, I'm obviously the bigger Nolan fan out of us. But from The Dark Knight on, one thing I've been thinking of is he tries to pack too much in. I think you alluded to it a bit, Thomas, with you're talking about No Man's Land, and I was thinking about Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison, comic book writer, one of the best of his era. But sometimes at his peak, he would write a story and then individual panels would have people discussing things, and they would mention things that sounded like their own story that could make like for their own book somewhere, but it would just be completely in passing. And sometimes it would give you a heady sense of a complete universe. And other times you would just feel kind of bogged down and just too much stuff being crammed in. And I would say one thing about Nolan since The Dark Knight is narratively, he sometimes falls into that.
Whoa.
Maybe.
Too many ideas stuffed in too small a can.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But I love him. I think that's great. I would rather have 10 Grant Morrisons and 10 Christopher Nolans than one Joss Whedon.
Yes.
I don't know why this became a Joss Whedon podcast. I mean, Joss Whedon's a little bit more upfront with some of his politics, maybe. But I just want to say that so I can say that in the Nolan Variations by Tom Schoen, Nolan actually talks about something we had talked about earlier, and that's the idea of a vigilante standing between society and its collapse is a very uncomfortable one for me and for most people, I think. But there's a certain wish fulfillment to it. You want to believe in heroic figures who can individually tip the balance or inspire people in a particular way. That's the way in which these films were made. I've had conversations with friends of mine, and they ask why I don't make a film about the things I care about politically, and I always say, well, because it doesn't work.
Silly.
I was on board with you for the first bit of that.
Or Nolan, at least.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have. That's the thing about Nolan that we've been watching is that there's a part of him that's always the showman, and not to the degree of Steven Spielberg, but a certain amount of him plays to the cheap seats. I think his background as a writer maybe has him avoid some of Spielberg's trappings, but he wants his movies to be seen and enjoyed by everybody. His
Definitely.
politics would just get in the way.
And maybe a superhero film isn't the place for it, or it's too bound in time.
I think one thing that's fairly clear about the Nolan films we've seen so far is that he does not have a sophisticated worldview outside of the cinema, in the sense of like, and I'm not saying that he's stupid or anything, but like, I don't think he's probably a political person. I don't think he has a political ideology that he's trying to hide or show or anything. Like he just is a dude in the world who likes to make movies.
I think that's unfair because I mean I could look at a bridge maybe and think this like and not know what the engineer was, what their politics were.
But he's dealt. I mean, this movie is about class struggle. He has a movie about the end of the world because of climate catastrophe. He has a movie about the blackest thing that humans have ever done. Dropping a bomb on another people, and none of those movies have a political point of view. He obviously is interested in this hot button topic matters, but he doesn't want you to catch him thinking and I just don't at this point after seeing Oppenheimer. I'm not sure he has a strong idea of what how the world should be.
You think he's just about movies?
I think he is yeah, in the sense but not as a criticism, but yes. I don't think he is a superficial person. I think he's concerned with art more than politics.
Yeah.
I get the sense that he's super, super worried about nuclear bombs, because how many of his movies in the last 10 years have had nuclear bombs in them? At least 3, right?
And climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even when he talks about climate change, like all the stuff in the first half of Interstellar, there's plenty of class war content in there, but he's just trying to tell you what happened. He's not trying to relitigate any of that like another director would have spent a lot of time doing, I think.
Yeah, I think there is something in the selection of what he decides to do which is inherently political. I was being a little tongue-in-cheek with the architect and bridge thing, but at the same time I think that it's not just the cheap seats, it's like just to be inclusive of all points of view, to be able to get people into the theater. He doesn't want to bias or tip too much, and we carry certain inherent ideas, I guess, of like what's justice, regardless of our politics.
I don't personally. Personally, that sentence doesn't mean I don't believe in justice outside of politics personally. But I see what you're saying. A lot of other people would not feel that way.
Well, that's a different podcast.
Is Bane punching the pillar outside the courthouse representative of him punching one of the pillars of justice, do you think?
I really wish Henry Cavill would come in and reload his arms, and then they'd go at it right at that moment, because it's the same energy when he punches that wall.
I guess the other interesting thing about these films, as I'm thinking about it right now, not to we don't need to talk about the middle film, I don't think, to get here, but the super villains aren't really all that super villainy, in the sense of we don't have Killer Croc, we don't have somebody who has radiation on him to become something. We don't have Mr. Freeze getting diamonds to power his cryo suit. This is probably one of the most grounded superhero series about some batshit, pun I guess intended, things.
What, you're telling me Jim Gordon didn't also see giant alligators down there?
Now that's a picture.
Well, the MCU started with Iron Man in a metal suit fighting another guy in a metal suit. There was nothing mystical, scientifical about it.
At the time, it was you had to be grounded to get it in. And remember that it was only after Snyder's movies came out that we stopped calling Nolan's grimdark Batmans the realist movies, or the gritty realist superhero movies is how people thought of these at the time.
I don't know about gritty, but it was within the realm of reality. You know what? We didn't talk about Wally Pfister. This was his last movie with Nolan. There is an astonishing scene at the end when Batman says to Gordon, "Is you're just a good guy who put a coat around a little kid and said it's okay." I don't know how I turned into Henny Youngman, but but it cuts to a scene from Batman Begins. It is mesmerizing to me anyway, because I love cinematography. How brown and warm the tones are from the scene from Batman Begins.
Yeah.
They don't do any color adjustment, and then it cuts back to The Dark Knight Rises, and it is the high definition IMAX, clean, slightly colorful, but not too much, almost cold aesthetic that we associate with Nolan so much.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's a great moment.
Yeah.
There's also a great.
Wait. It's a great moment visually. It's dumb as fuck. Like, if you think about it. He's only really saved one kid ever.
Thomas.
He's like, they cut from Gary Oldman saying, "Fuck, I'm the worst detective ever."
Yeah, but it gets you. It tugs at your heartstrings. Same with Alfred crying at the grave. It doesn't matter.
Oh man,
if
that
it's
shit all pays off, and these are some of the greatest actors of their
Some
eras.
dude whose middle name has some rookie whose middle name is Robin is able to figure out who Batman was and I wasn't.
Yeah, wait,
Yeah.
they never do explain how he figured it out, do
He
they?
just knew. He knew.
Because
Because
he's an orphan too.
He's
They're
hiding
both orphans.
anger.
Yeah.
Because they're two peas punching it out in the same pot, as Garth Marenghi might say.
Speaking of Fister, he does have a great moment.
That was
Wrong
not a pun
podcast,
intended.
Ryan.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. The time has passed.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna. Oh wait, okay, because of the temporal pincer movement, where we still will be able to make the hardly even knower jokes, right?
Oh, we got double fisting coming up with The Dark Knight and Inception.
What's the? I'm not in on this. I haven't been listening.
We have two more movies left: Inception and The Dark Knight.
Yeah, but okay.
That's it. And then Paprika, and then our top 12.
There's 12 Nolans.
There's 12
There's
Nolans.
so many Nolans, dude.
Yep. We watched the special features on this, and Christopher Nolan is so
Insane.
he's so insane, but when he's talking, he's just so modulated and flat.
He's one of those people where he's one of those directors where I seriously feel like if they didn't direct movies, they would have killed someone and been in jail by now.
Yes. And then you cut to his wife, and she's like so enthusiastic. She's great. You can see why she's such a great producer, because she's very engaging, and she could probably talk you into funding any shit her husband has up his sleeve. Great team.
Yeah.
A dynamic duo.
All right, we've wasted enough time here.
Wait, real quick. The only source of news he has on what's happening in Gotham is one TV, and he throws a rock at it and breaks it when he gets mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other guy's like, "Hey, American Idol or Moroccan Idol."
Yeah, because if you have
how are we gonna watch that?
There wasn't going to just be news 24 hours a day only about Gotham, right? There's going to be other stuff on there.
Well, no, it was purposely put up for him to see it. So Bane was somewhere going like, "Press play," and then his henchman would press play on his remote control, and it would go beep, all the way over to Morocco.
He was
And,
playing She-Devil on a loop to torture him.
Oh,
If Bane were working with Ethan Hunt, they would have done the stream on a time delay, so that by the time Batman got back, it was already all blown up.
Whoa!
We would have gotten a really great Planet of the Apes moment at the end there.
wow,
Wow, that's a great alternate. Yeah, I want to see that cut.
me too. Fuck yeah! All right, let's wrap this up, boys.
oh! I thought it was on autopilot. I had updated the software earlier.
Who updated? There was a firmware patch.
Kennedy, John
Why-
Kennedy.
Why would he use his own? Like, why would they be like, "Oh, it's Bruce Wayne, the partial owner of this company. His name's on the door. I guess he updated it. He didn't have a login. It wasn't like Dark and Broody 87. He just used his own name.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman did the Paul Rudd double take.
Is this what it's like when I'm unreasonably mad about something we watch?
Oh, is that me?
Just no, you're not. I respect the level of minutia with which you're examining this film for flaws is really
Yeah,
know.
and it's not like. But here's a genuine criticism of that is you watch a film and you can enjoy it, and it's dumb. Like it's supposed to be kind of dumb, right? Or it's supposed to be suspension of disbelief. But I just had a hard time in the theater, and on my second watch, like going along with the dumbness.
Yeah,
Sure.
Because it was just so much. It was just assaultive. There was just so much.
Well, there is a difference. I've been trying to think of good comparisons to throw back at Thomas, Ken, but he does have a good point that Nolan's serious tone throws the goofiness for an extra loop that like Face Off, you know what you're getting the first time you see a dove fly in slow motion. You know what movie you're watching.
I think that's what makes Dark Knight Rises singular and amazing is Nolan's attention to detail and his seriousness, where he is treating this script as serious as he treated Oppenheimer. That's what makes this movie amazing.
Yeah.
And like Oppenheimer, for me, it just so happens Dark Knight Rises is cinematic epicock for Thomas.
That was part 2 of our pairing of The Prestige and the Dark Knight Rises.
And so you'll join us for the next pairing, which we've already mentioned will be Inception and The Dark Knight.
Oh,
Who do y'all have a guess for The Dark Knight?
You've
Okay.
already agreed to all 3 Batman.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm playing out the trilogy.
Jack will be back for The Dark Knight.
I'd love to see it.
Well, I've only seen it probably 40 times, so.
It has been years since I've seen Inception. I'm looking forward to both of these.
One thing I do want to talk about with Dark Knight is like burnout. If you guys ever get burnt out on a movie to an extent where you can't ever get the magic back.
Not The Dark Knight, no.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I can't wait to discuss that. And I bet people can't wait to hear it.
Hot take.
Ryan, thank you for the theme song.
Thank you for playing the theme song and for putting up with the unexpected but wonderfully fruitful technical difficulties earlier. You
were half
what
right.
are you talking about? We stitched it together, or Ken stitched it so well together in the editing.
He really is a hero
That's
and a
right.
genius.
Yeah.
And all that people noticed is a marked uptick in quality when I came back on the mic. That's all I'm saying.
Huh. Well, you can weigh in on that on the normal social medias. We're on them all. And as you've heard in recent episodes, we're doing a subscriber drive. So if you subscribe and you can answer the following question, our very own Ryan, whom some are calling the Bane of our podcast, will perform a song for you mentioning your name and give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And that question is, this bud's for who? This bud's for who? So if you can answer that question, this bud's for who, send it to us via socials or email at thegoodthepodtheugly@gmail.com.
Bane knows the answer. Do you think Bane will write in?
Answer the question. The spoils are for you, listener.
It almost became like a Yoda speak.
Bane and Yoda are pretty close.
Yours the rewards are. Thanks for Jack for joining us for these
Jack.
Batman.
Anytime, I guess. I'm back the week after next, so looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, listener.
Oh, you don't have to say thank you back.
You know what that makes us together? Together, that makes us flash gorgeous.
Flash gorgeous.
I'm not talking at you, I'm talking to you.
Flash gorgeous.
I don't want to hear about you, I want to hear from you.
It's 10-4.
10-4, buddies. Destroy. Kill all hippies.
I don't hate it, I just don't know why you strayed from the formula.
You bastards! You don't know it, Bob. I'm an artist! And I must reflect that in my rhyme.
He's like Jason, but he monologues.
Uh-huh.
Playing She-Devil on a loop to torture him.